Do you remember much about what occurred?
Not a lot. I'm sure I did it. I just don't remember everything in sequence.
Do you remember the shooting itself?
I don't remember the shooting itself.
You don't?
No. I don't remember it, but I'm sure it happened. I'm sure I did it.
Killing 2 adults and injuring 8 children and a policeman. When asked why she was shooting, Brenda declared, "I don't like Mondays."
There was some gunshots, but I thought that they had firecrackers.
I didn't understand why I was on the ground.
10-year-old Crystal Hardy.
I got shot and then Mr. Brown said, "Duck, guys, run!"
If you look at the eyes, you see...
The principal and custodian would die. A sniper was firing random shots at school children.
Do you think she should have got the death penalty?
Sure. Yeah.
Hello everybody, my name is Haley Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I do videos regarding conspiracy theories, controversial people, true crime, and all things spooky, scary, skeletons. So if you're into any of that, you can subscribe, and if not, let's chill, let's vibe, let's relax, let's do some makeup. We are going to be talking about the case of Brenda Spencer. Now, that's it. I was gonna say a joke, but then I forgot the joke. Sorry, no joke. Y'all are like, good. keep your jokes to yourself. Now, I don't really think there's any more to say besides that, so let's just hop right into it, I guess. Brenda Spencer was born on April 3rd, 1962 in the suburbs of San Diego, California, more specifically the suburb of San Carlos. Now, Brenda was born into her family of 4. She has 1 older sister, 1 older brother, 1 younger sister, and her mom, Dot, as well as her dad, Wallace. For obvious reasons, the siblings today kind of have their names as undisclosed. Brenda, at a very young age, her parents actually separated, and for some reason, and I don't know exactly why, but her brother and sister went on to move in with her mother, while Brenda actually moved in with her father. As far as Brenda's relationship with her mother, she did not have a good relationship with her mother, mostly because her mother was she didn't want to be present either. She didn't really like Brenda. She also obviously, this is gonna like, do you hear? The mother just didn't really like her ex-husband, but she also didn't really like Brenda for some reason. She wanted nothing to do with Brenda, didn't really talk to her as well, and even to the point where the mother ended up getting remarried and having Brenda's younger sister, and just kind of starting a whole new family on her own. Now, as far as Brenda and her father did not have a lot of money at all. They were living in a house, but the house had no furniture in it, nothing but a mattress on the floor that Brenda and her father would both sleep on. Brenda's father was also a big alcoholic, so there was always like whiskey bottles and beer bottles all over the floor. As well as Brenda saying now that during this time her father was very verbally abusive to her and even was sexually abusive to her. It actually influenced Brenda to thus start dressing like a boy. During the 70s, it was all about having pretty dresses and skirts and like wide-legged pants, but in Brenda's case, all she would dress up in were baggy clothes, like baggy pants, baggy sweaters, just trying to hide herself as much as possible. Due to Brenda's extremely tough home life, her school life was not that much better. At school, she was labeled as the bad kid and would get in trouble a lot. She was always causing ruckuses. She was always talking back to her teachers. Her classmates have even said that she, during school, would always like talk about her hostility against the police, and she used to talk about killing one day. Her classmates would also say that Brenda was always talking about wanting to do something big to get on TV. Now, at the time, her classmates just thought like, oh, she's gonna be an actress or something, but they didn't know the extent of what she was talking about. Now, besides the bad kid behavior, she also had a bunch of substance abuse problems. So she would constantly ditch class and skip school in general to smoke weed and do cigarettes and drink some of her father's alcohol. Really big factor of this like substance abuse issue. If you see it from her perspective and where her life is at, my neighbor. If you look at Brenda's life right now, it's not the best at all. You're not only in deep financial troubles, and then your dad's an alcoholic who's constantly abusing you, and you're also addicted to all these substances, and your mother never talks to you, and your siblings don't talk to you. It's just a very, very tough situation to be in. So because of this, Brenda, on top of everything, also grew extremely depressed because of the way that her life was going. Typically, all of these feelings that she would feel, she would tend to keep inside, because she didn't really have a lot of friends. Her teachers described her as being very introverted. At this time, she was around 5'2", bright red hair, big glasses, and she was always wearing baggy clothes, like I said, or beanies, just trying to hide herself. Her teachers would also say that she wouldn't really talk much during class. But surprisingly, the one thing that Brenda really did take interest in was photography. Hey guys, so I said photography instead of photography. It's photography, not photography. Silly Haley, get it together. Photography, not photography. She took a photography class in high school, and that was probably the only teacher that gave her a very good review, in that she really did have an eye for art and she could probably go very, very far with photography, but unfortunately she did not. But in 1978, at the age of 16, Brenda actually opened up to one of her teachers that she really, really trusted about her depression and what was going on at home. Now, this was very big for Brenda because, as I said, her family either doesn't talk to her or hates her, and she doesn't have many friends because she's super introverted. Brenda opening up to quite literally anyone was a very, very big deal, and she decided to open up to one of her teachers about all of the abuse going on at home, as well as her being extremely depressed, and her also expressing to this teacher that she wanted to off herself. Now, the teacher, hearing this, she was very, very concerned for Brenda's well-being, so she contacted the father, and she told the father what Brenda had told her about like her being depressed, and that she really feels like he should send Brenda to a mental institution to get the help that she needs and treat her depression. But in response, the father just said, "You don't know what you're talking about. My child is fine." Just basically like denying everything. She's fine. She's just a little sad. Like, what teenage kid isn't sad? She's probably just hormonal. Also, a thing to note is that this was during the late 70s, early 80s, where mental health wasn't really as well known about or taken care of as it is now. Back then, if you tell someone that you're depressed, they just kind of see that as like, oh, you're not depressed, you're just sad. Everyone's sad. Or if you have anxiety, then it's like, oh no, you don't have anxiety, you're just nervous, and that's normal. And I also feel like that's probably another reason why a lot, not all parents, but like some of them, they tend to not really listen to their kids' mental health issues, because that's the era that they grew up in. They grew up of like, oh, you're depressed, just walk it off sort of thing. So Brenda was in the same exact situation. Her father just wasn't listening to her. Whenever she would try to tell him like, I'm depressed, I'm going to off myself, and he just didn't really believe her. He just felt like she was being over dramatic. Brenda actually ended up trying to off herself multiple times, but every single time she tried to take a lot of drugs or mix drugs with alcohol in attempt to off herself, she was just unsuccessful every single time. And then every time she would wake up, and this is like really, really sad, every time she would wake up, she would just feel even worse about herself because she felt as if she couldn't do anything right. And the one thing that was going to make her feel good, and she couldn't even do that thing right. So that's like what she was thinking. She just felt very broken and defeated and felt like, you know, nothing even matters. And so after trying to off herself multiple times, Brenda actually went up to her father and confessed to him that she was trying to off herself multiple times, but every single time she did it, she was unsuccessful. If you don't give me the help that I need, or if you don't start believing me, I'm going to continue to do this. And not really like as a threat, just more of like, I can't control what I do anymore, so I'm just letting you know that if I don't get help for this, I'm not going to stop. With the dad's mentality of her being overdramatic, he's not even really hearing like, oh, my child's in pain. He's more of just hearing my child's being overdramatic, and she probably hasn't tried to off herself multiple times. Following Christmas of 1978, Brenda asked her father if she could have a radio for Christmas, and he ended up getting her a gun for Christmas. 10-22 semi-automatic caliber rifle with telescopic sight. She tells her dad that she's wanting to off herself and she's tried it multiple times but has been unsuccessful all those times, and if she doesn't get help, she will continue to do it until she is successful. And then the father gets her a gun for Christmas. Just like, yeah, that is a little heartbreaking. And it was to Brenda in the moment as well. Like, Brenda, after the fact, had talked about these experiences of her childhood and basically said literally what all of us are thinking of, my father really wanted me to off myself. Like, he gave me a gun. You don't give like a depressed 16-year-old a gun for any sort of reason, you know? And it was said that the father was really big into hunting, and that was his reasoning for giving her the gun. But it was just really odd because Brenda had never expressed an interest in hunting or anything like that before. Some people call it bad timing. Some people say it was on purpose. Brenda's 16 years old. She has this gun in her hand and she's, you know, kind of panicking because she's like, okay, now I have this gun. Should I do it? Like, should I actually do it now? Like, he just gave me the tools that I needed. So instead of choosing to off herself with the gun, she then starts to practice with the gun. She does kind of go on all of these hunting trips with her father. Her father teaches her how to hunt ducks and birds, and it would happen quite frequently where after school, Brenda would go out into the backyard and just shoot birds flying in the sky. And this was basically just a hobby of hers. Again, kind of going back to that stereotype of how a lot of killers will start off killing animals before they actually start killing real people, and getting more practice with killing animals and also more practice with her gun to do what she is about to do. January 29th, 1979, around 8:30 in the morning, Brenda calls off from school because she says that she's not feeling too well. Her father leaves to go to work. She's bored and she's alone. So across the street from her house was actually Cleveland Elementary School. So basically what would happen is that there was this gate that was kind of guarding off the front of the school, and around 15 minutes before school started, the principal would come out and unlock the gate and bring all of the kids into the school so they can all go to their classes. I'm thinking like to when I was in elementary school, there was like a pickup drop-off thing and you would just get dropped off and go straight to your classroom. I don't know. But again, this is the 70s. I was in kindergarten in like, I don't know, 2008, I think. So Brenda was looking out her front window and looking at all of the kids in the schoolyard. What she decides to do is pull out her gun and start aiming it at the kids. She then gets this urge to start pulling the trigger and open firing, and that's exactly what Brenda did. Brenda ended up open firing at this schoolyard of children and just shooting absolutely anyone that was around. She ends up firing off 30 rounds of it, and she's looking through this telescope so she knows exactly who she's aiming for. And I want you guys to like remember that too, because later on in interviews, she says that in this moment, she didn't really know what she was aiming at. And also, she already had like practice with the gun. So it's not like, you know, she didn't know how to use it and she was just firing at anything. As soon as the teachers inside started to hear the gunshot, there are so many interviews of the teachers who survived this shooting talking about the day that it happened.
It wasn't a stoner neighborhood. This is a good neighborhood. San Carlos, good schools, things like this don't happen.
As we were running down the sidewalk, we could hear shooting, and when we got down here to the end, there was a bunch of little school kids all huddled against the side of the wall.
As Brenda continued shooting, the police evacuated the 300 pupils out of the back of the school, where they were bused to safety.
I turned And that's when the bullet went through my wrist, because Brenda was actually aiming, she was shooting to kill.
I remember Crystal Hardy screaming, "Am I going to die? Am I going to die? Am I going to die?"
Absolute chaos to start with. Utterly chaos.
Brenda Spencer.
That's my student. She should have been at school today. She's having a bad day.
When the teachers first heard the gunshots, they didn't know what it was at first. They thought that it was like either firecrackers or some sort of toy, and it wasn't until they heard people screaming that they understood that it was indeed gunshots. So many people came out in attempt to save as many children as they could, but unfortunately Brenda ended up killing the principal as well as the custodian and harming and injuring 9 others, 8 of them being children and 1 of them being a police officer. During this moment of the gunshots, a garbage truck was going past. So immediately when the garbage truck was going past, the garbage truck had turned into the street between Brenda's house and the school. So Brenda could no longer shoot at the children because there was the big garbage truck kind of blocking her from doing so. And this actually ended up saving so many lives. The entire event lasted 16 minutes. That's like forever, you know? Like you always hear all of these killings happening or lasting like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, stuff like that, where it feels like a long time, but it's actually not that long. But this lasted 16 minutes. So I could just imagine the fear that these kids and the teachers probably wondering in their heads, like, when is this going to stop? And the principal had passed away due to trying to protect these children. In that moment, you really do understand if the principal is, you know, a principal for the money or if they're a principal because they actually care about the well-being of the children. And I feel like in this moment, the principal really showed up and tried to save the children from the gunshots, like putting himself in danger in order to save the lives of his children. Same thing with the custodian as well, protected and saved so many children in risk of his own. So I think that's really incredible. After the 30 rounds had been fired, it really wasn't that hard to figure out where the shots were coming from because, as I said, this lasted like 16 minutes. So the police already knew that it was coming from Brenda's house, especially when the garbage truck was blocking the way of fire. When the police got there, they actually stood outside of Brenda's house, but the only reason that they didn't come in is because Brenda threatened to come out shooting at everyone. She ended up barricading herself in there for about 7 hours, whilst her house was surrounded by police officers and SWAT teams. So this is actually like a big misconception. A lot of people think that Brenda Spencer was the very first person to start a school shooting, when that's false. There were a few really big school shootings, like deathly school shootings, happening in like the early 1960s. Brenda didn't really invent school shootings. There was such things as school shootings before, but Brenda really did start a trend, because then 10 years later, that's when the Columbine shootings had happened, and even now so many school shootings happen. It's extremely, you know, scary. She was not the first person to do it. I think she was the first person to kind of bring attention to it, because I didn't even know about the very first school shootings. In order to know about them, I had to look them up. This case is also so bizarre because she was a 16-year-old girl. Not saying that like young girls didn't do heinous crimes back in this day, but it was just, you know, it's always odd to see children kill other people because like they're just so young, and it's not like, I don't know, it's just, it's so crazy to me. As I said, she barricaded in her house for about 7 hours, and during those 7 hours, she actually received a call from the San Diego Union Tribune. And how this journalist even found Brenda's number is basically by calling random people in the area, and I'll insert a clip from a short film about this.
Hello, my name is Steve Legatt. I'm with the Tribune. Am I speaking to the person inside 6356 Lake Atkin Avenue?
Yeah, that's who you're speaking to.
Now that short film, I don't recommend. It's not accurate at all. It's very offensive, actually, that whole thing. I don't know. I feel like you'll watch it and you'll be like, yo. Brenda ended up picking up the phone and confirming that it was the girl in the house that was shooting at all those kids. When the journalist asked Brenda what the reasoning was for what she did, now you would think with this part of the story, the journalist calling Brenda while she's in the house, that the San Diego Union Tribune probably would have posted this conversation somewhere or released it somewhere, since this is such an iconic part of the story and the quotes that she says is also so iconic. But I have searched so many places. I have searched high and low newspaper articles from 1979 by the San Diego Tribune. All I found were sparse quotes of what she said, but not the full quote. All these things she did say, did she say it in this order? I don't know. As I said, I can't find it anywhere. So the journalist asks her, hey, why did you do that? And she replies, I just did it for the fun of it. I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day. And then I'm assuming there's a pause because the journalist is probably like, and then she goes, I have to go now. I shot a pig, I think. Pig being policeman. And I want to shoot more. I'm having too much fun to surrender. I had no reason for it. And it was just a lot of fun. It was like shooting ducks in a pond. They looked like a herd of cows standing around. They being the children. It was really easy pickings. The police are probably coming in any second, and if they do, I'll just come out shooting. End alleged quote. Oh my god. Oh my god! I don't like Mondays. Ew, that is like so scary. That is so scary. It gives me the heebie-jeebies. I don't like Mondays. Like, that's so dark. That's so messed up. I don't know if she was joking, but that's like really messed up, especially when you just... Anyways, so that's what she said on the phone with the journalist. Kind of bizarre, and Brenda Spencer to this day is still known for her quote, I don't like Mondays. Now, her quote, I don't like Mondays, actually inspired a Irish rock band by the name of the Boom Bomb, the what? The boom, the boom, ba boom, boom, the skidda ba 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 wow, the Boomtown Rats wrote a song called I Don't Like Mondays based on this event. And this song actually ended up being #1 in 32 countries for the first 4 weeks of its release. But I'll get more into that later. Anyways, going back to the actual story. Brenda's in her house. Police are outside with their intercoms. They're trying to negotiate with her, trying to get her to come out. And after 7 hours, she does eventually come out, but the reason she comes out is because she was promised by negotiators to get Burger King. The girl comes out because she wants Burger King. She's getting a little hungry. That's like, this whole story is just a lot. It really just shows you how careless Brenda really was. You could also like argue that her depression was probably the cause of this as well. I don't know. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you have the urge to kill someone. There are so many people that are severely depressed, but the thought of opening fire at a bunch of innocent children never crosses their mind. All right, I just wanted to mention one more thing that I forgot to mention. The second time around when Brenda was at the prison, they did an evaluation on her, like a physical examination. Brenda's frontal lobe was damaged. Frontal lobes are the controls for memory, emotions, impulse control, problem solving, social interaction, and motor function. So damage to the tissues or the neurons in the frontal lobe can lead to personality changes, difficulty concentrating, planning, and impulsivity. Now, knowing that information, I don't think that it was out of her own free will. I feel like it was more uncontrollable impulsivity, and that's why she did what she did. Like, in the moment, she just did it because she didn't know how to not do it, you know? But then again, it's like, it's kind of a sticky situation because it's like, on one hand, it wasn't really her fault because she had the temporal lobe problem, but then on the other hand, that doesn't make what she did okay. Like, she still, at the end of the day, killed 2 people and traumatized 300 plus children that were standing outside of that school. So, I don't know, like, it's just it's a little bit difficult to form an opinion. So yeah, I feel like that really does play a big part, but due to this damage to the frontal lobe, that means that if she is ever released, you never know if these things might happen again. Now, I don't really know like in depth about frontal lobes, so I don't know if like most cases are like this, but I just really wanted to mention that because it's very, very important. When she came out to surrender, the police immediately took her into custody. As I was saying earlier about the iconic song, through this song, he was getting a lot of backlash, people being like, yeah, no, you should not be writing a song about this, because this was a month after it happened. Innocent children were still suffering the injuries of this.
10-year-old Crystal Hardy went home with her parents. She had escaped with a minor injury and a bad fright.
I got shot, and then Mr. Barnes said, Crystal, he said, Duck, you guys run. Then I got shot, and then I went in the nurse's office, and I was bleeding a lot. I just was laying there. And then the policeman came and brought me here.
You must have been really scared.
I was. It hurt.
The bullet that went through her wrist didn't harm anything. It went through, didn't hit the bone, or we're just praising the Lord. You're lucky.
Take care, Crystal.
They were still traumatized, and this guy just writes a song about it as if it's nothing. Like, the only reason it's nothing to him is because it didn't happen to him. If it happened to him, then obviously he wouldn't have been as nonchalant about it as he was. This guy, in response to all of the backlash, decided to say, it was a senseless act, so I wrote the perfect senseless song to illustrate it. And again, that didn't really help anything. People still saw him as super, super insensitive, and even me, myself today, sees that as super, super insensitive. Like, I don't know, maybe hot take, unpopular opinion, you just shouldn't write songs about murderers, because maybe we shouldn't just be glorifying these traumatic events, especially when the wound is so fresh. This band ended up going on tour, and the band was like, oh my god. Even though they wrote this song about it and continuously performing it for their tour, they said, out of respect for all of the victims, we're gonna cancel our San Diego spot. But don't worry, we're still gonna perform the song in other places, just not San Diego, because that would be bad. How saying that you're a hero because you're not gonna perform the song about a traumatic event where innocent children were shot at in the town that it happened, we'll skip this one. Out of respect, like, I don't know, maybe just don't perform it at all. If you're on this, respectful train, might as well keep the train a-running. Even better, just pretend like you never wrote it. After this song came out, it started to spike the attention of not only the people that lived in San Diego, but people that lived all over the country. As I said, this song went #1 for 4 weeks in 32 different countries. Since this song was so popular, it thus made the Brenda Spencer case even more popular. Now, Brenda was actually in custody for about a year until the day after her 18th birthday. That is when she was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
Department of Corrections to sentence defendants like Spencer to California Youth Authority custody until she's 25, then go to state prison. That everyone expected. What they did not expect was the judge's permission to tape the audio portion of the proceedings.
There being no legal cause, my sentence should not now be imposed.
That is correct.
As to counts 1 and 2, the sentence is 25 years to life.
Spencer, who had pleaded guilty, showed little emotion during the 10-minute court session, held just 1 day after her 18th birthday. Her father fought back tears.
Is she doing pretty well? Holding up well?
I don't want to talk about it right now if you don't mind.
For 2 accounts of murder and deadly assault of a weapon. For some reason, the charges, the 9 accounts of people that were injured, those charges were dropped. I'm assuming that Brenda probably, I don't know, like came up with some sort of deal. That's a lot. Like, that is a lot of counts that you're just gonna dismiss and pretend that never happened. Like, that's really, really, that was really, really bizarre to me. She currently resides in the California Institution for Women in Corona, California, which, didn't even know was a place. Although she got 25 years to life in prison, there was a chance for her to get parole. So in 1993, she faced against the court and attempted to get parole.
1993. Brenda claimed she was hallucinating at the time of the shooting, even though her toxicology report showed no traces of drugs.
I was watching TV and I started drinking whiskey and taking pills with it. And I was smoking marijuana with PCP. And I started hallucinating. And when I'd look out, I'd see like commando guys, like in combat gear and stuff coming up.
It was so odd because if you watch Brenda Spencer at the time, like during the 1979 hearing, the way that she explains everything, it kind of makes it feel like she doesn't understand what she did wrong. The extent of everything that she did, you would think that, you know, 14 years later of getting medicated and treated and getting all of like these counselors and therapists that they need, her ideas about it or that her demeanor about the whole situation would be remorseful. But in this 1993 interview where she's trying to get parole, she literally acts the same exact way. It more just felt like her saying, let me out of here, I want to go out and live my life, instead of like, well, I actually do understand why I did what I did and why it was wrong, and I'll know that I will never do it again because I have all of these counselors and I'm medicated and like I'm able to integrate with society. Felt like she cared more about her freedom instead of really understanding the issues and trauma that she caused to so many people. Because of this, in 1993, when she attempted for parole, she was then denied because, like I just said, it seemed like she didn't even really, again, still understand what she did was wrong. People have lost their children over this. People are traumatized. In 2001, 22 years later after this occurrence, she's currently 39 years old, she again attempts to apply for parole. She talks about how she was sexually abused by her father as a child. Since they shared the same mattress, like they literally slept together every single night. Why she did what she did was because she was just so depressed, and it was actually her father that was kind of the main initiator for all of this, because he got her the gun. He was constantly abusing her. That the guy who was granting her parole was named Brett Granlund. Didn't help that he was a straight white old male in power, so of course he didn't believe her story when she was saying that she was sexually abused. This story I 100% like believe her on, because the father of Brenda, Wallace, remember Wallace, he ended up marrying Brenda's 17-year-old cellmate and had a kid with her. 17 years old. This man married a 17-year-old girl and had a kid with her.
So Wallace, how did you come to marry one of Brenda's former cellmates? What happened there?
I don't think I want to answer that question. Okay.
And are you still with her?
No.
No. Okay. But your daughter lives here?
Yes.
Oh.
She did not want her daughter. Okay? And that's the only statement I will make.
Now, I don't know why. What? Why did no one say anything? Yeah, he ended up marrying a 17-year-old cellmate of Brenda's and had a kid with her. Now, they later did divorce, and then in 2016, the father, Wallace, actually passed away at 86. Only reason that the person, Brett, that was granting her parole, he didn't believe this statement when she was talking about it, because he says that it was really odd that she randomly brought this story up when he was looking at all of her therapy and counselor documents. She had never mentioned once throughout all of her 22 years of therapy, never once did she bring up a sexual assault story. So that's why he thought that this was more of a spur of the moment save. Always believe the victim. I do believe that Brenda was abused by her father physically. The main thing these people are looking for when, you know, granting someone parole is if they are genuinely remorseful for what they had done. And I feel like in this situation, Brenda, rather than understanding that she, you know, although she was hurt, she was hurting so many other people in the process, and that is where the problem lied. Instead of Brenda seeing that, she just kind of saw it as like hurting all those innocent children. It was justified because I was not in the right headspace due to my surrounding circumstances. Which again, you know, like there are so many people that suffer from those same circumstances, but the thought of killing someone never goes through their head. She was again denied parole because the officers and the court just believed that she still just found no remorse in what she did, or she didn't fully understand the extent of what she did. And then it was also in this 2001 court hearing where it was made notice that by diagnosis of the therapists and doctors at the prison, she was diagnosed with epilepsy, depression, and schizophrenia. I want to say this real quick, and I'm gonna say it loud so all the people in the back hear it too. Just because a person has schizophrenia does not mean that they are going to kill you. And it also doesn't mean that they're going to constantly hear voices. Not every single person who has schizophrenia also has murderous tendencies. There are so many people that don't have schizophrenia at all and still kill people, you know? So like schizophrenia has nothing to do with it. It's probably a contributing factor as to why some killers kill, but it's not the only reason. I feel like this is a huge, you know, misconception, and it's so heartbreaking because it's like, people shouldn't feel bad about vocalizing their mental health issues in fear of getting judged. That's why I kind of wanted to like take a little step aside to talk about this, because it just makes me feel so bad when all of these people in my comments are saying that like, oh, I have DID, and like it really sucks that a lot of people think that we will kill them just based on this stereotype, and understand that a lot of the stereotypes of people with schizophrenia or DID or just any sort of mental illness is mostly stereotypes made by mainstream media. I mean, the Joker, first off, a murderer with schizophrenia, again, does not really help, as well as people with DID. When the movie Split came out, did not help that Split was a movie about a guy with DID that also kidnapped and killed a bunch of people. The movie Split was just so over dramatized, and that's another thing when it comes to these mental illnesses in the Hollywood scene, is that they tend to over dramatize things for the Hollywood feel. So these things that you see online, or these stereotypes that you see in movies, aren't 100% true. It may be the case for a few people, but definitely not all of them. I don't want you guys to also play into the premeditated stereotype of like, oh, this person I want to back away from because I know from watching the Joker how they act. Like, the Joker is not I just wanted to say that because I saw so many people feeling bad. No, you shouldn't feel bad. Like, this is nothing of your fault. It's the fault of the people that judge you for things you can't control. Like, that is their problem. The people who think all of these stereotypes are correct instead of just simply educating themselves. I just wanted to say that really quick because I don't want people to ever feel like their mental issues should not be vocalized out of fear of what people will say. So with that being said, anyways, in 2001, she was again not granted parole for the second time because she just didn't really show much remorse for what she did. She was more, again, thinking about herself, and she needs to understand that nobody was forcing her to get behind that gun and do what she did. In 2005, she once again tried for parole. This story was the reasoning of behind why she did what she did. So as I said, she wasn't really showing much remorse for what she did. She had said in this 2005 court hearing that the reasoning was to off herself. Basically, she saw all of the kids across the street and she just felt this need to shoot at them because at this point I told you that she had been trying to off herself multiple times, but all of those times she had been very unsuccessful. So she thought the only way to actually off herself successfully respectfully as if someone did it for her. So she was intentionally shooting at the police officers in hopes that they will pull out their guns and shoot back at her. This story, again, doesn't really have many consistencies because she was looking through the telescope of the gun. She knew exactly where she was aiming, and she was very skilled with shooting at birds and ducks. So with her experience of this gun, it wasn't her first time using it, and she knew how to use it very well. So if she was trying to aim at a police officer, she would have aimed at a police officer. She wouldn't have injured 9 others in the process. And I also want to mention that, remember earlier in her 1993 interview where she said the reason of why she did what she did was because she was very high on drugs and she was drinking and she thought that there was like combats coming up to her house. She was just hallucinating the entire thing. So again, this story doesn't really match up to what she said earlier. I'm not going to say anything, but you can form your own opinions about that. And throughout this interview, the negotiators were also trying to test her a little bit and being like, oh, well, in school, you were one of the smartest kids there. Like, I don't think I've ever heard a teacher that would call you dumb. And she'd be like, yeah, you know, I was pretty smart. And then the negotiator would say, oh, well, since you were so smart, why didn't you, you know, think it through that if you shot at a bunch of innocent children, someone was going to get hurt? And so she kind of starts like retracting her statements and being like, well, you know, like I just didn't really think about others getting hurt like that. It wasn't my intention to hurt people. It was just more of me wanting to off myself. She, again, in 2005 was denied for parole because this new story just didn't really match up with her claims. And also, let's not forget, when she was on the phone, she labeled the children as being a cow of herds. Cow of herds. Cow of herds. Cow of herds. And easy pickings, and it was like shooting ducks in a pond. So the police again denied her for parole. 2009, she tries again. This one, she doesn't really talk very much in this one. She then just, I think she's like learned from trying to get parole so many times. She's just sort of realized like, oh, the only way for me to get out of this is if I just don't say much. So that's kind of what she decides. And so for the 4th time, she's denied parole once again. Now, in 2019, recently, she tried to again try for parole, which she again was denied for. Now, I couldn't find any of the transcripts for the 2019 parole hearing, but there were like little excerpts of it online, and the main consensus was that she is actually for the very first time doing a lot better now. It was actually in this interview where she showed the first sign of remorse for what she did.
I realize that nothing I do and no amount of time will bring Mr. Ragg or Mr. Suker back. And it won't erase the fear and stuff that I've given to those kids. I just want them to know that I'm very sorry, and I don't know how to make it up to them. But I try every day to make myself a better person so that, because I don't want anything this horrible to ever happen again.
Do you think she should have got the death penalty?
Sure. Yeah. It was a bad thing to do, but I think that's how I feel.
Her term, 25 years to life, kind of was scary because when it happened 25 years ago and she received that sentence, I thought, I'll be so old then. It'll be different. It's not.
Those people did not deserve it. She had no right to, you know, take away the lives of the people that she did. So it seemed like now, she's like in her late 50s, like 58 or something. She's just now starting to understand that what she did was wrong. She is eligible for parole again in 2021. I don't know the exact date of when she's supposed to have her hearing, but it's happening this year. And so she may or may not get released. I don't know. You know, last hearing, she really showed remorse, and also in the last hearing she started mentioning how she's now in a bunch of volunteer programs. She's also in a lot of self-help groups. She's taking her medications. She's, you know, she's really on the right track to being successful when she gets out of there. So, and she even has a plan too. She wants to be a forklift driver, and she's also discussed with the company that she'd be working for, that it was completely fine for her to work there once she, you know, gets out of prison. So she already has like a life set up for her outside of prison. She just needs that green light for parole, which personally, I feel like if you open fire at a bunch of innocent children, even if it was for yourself or it was for the intent of killing other people, a lifetime sentence is equal to hurting 9 innocent people and killing 2 others, especially the wife of the principal. I really, really hope she's doing better now, but they did an interview with her back in 2009. Like, the wife of the principal, she is just not in the right headspace at all. This happened around like 40 years ago, and she still to this day has the house the same exact way as when her husband left. She has not changed any of his stuff. She has not washed any of his clothes, and she's very, very traumatized by it all. You know, that was the love of her life, and so to lose someone like that, even to this day, she's still suffering the consequences of what Brenda did. And I feel like after so many years of not even realizing what she did wrong, who knows, maybe she'll stay in there forever, maybe she'll be released. I personally hope that she stays in there. So yes, that is the story of Brenda Spencer. I really hope you guys enjoyed this story. This story was absolutely insane. As far as my own thoughts and opinions, I don't have much. When I was reading this story, it's honestly so crazy. It sounds like a movie. Like, the way that everything is, it's just so crazy, and I'd love to learn more about it. And I feel like by someone creating a movie, we'll be able to get that more information, such as like the direct quote on the phone call that I can't find anywhere. I would love to hear that, or something like that. I know there's a documentary about her called I Don't Like Mondays, but in that documentary, it's mostly just interviewing all of the people that was involved in the situation and not much of a visual representation. Also, tell me in the comments below what you guys think about murderer movies, such as, for example, Zac Efron playing Ted Bundy, or Ross Lynch playing Jeffrey Dahmer, or Michael Shannon playing the Iceman. You know, just like those type of movies where they're portraying a murderer's life and it's based on a true story. Do you guys feel like doing that, like doing those type of movies, are insensitive and kind of, you know, like, why are you glorifying a murderer's life story? Or do you think it raises awareness and it actually spreads truth instead of spreading rumors? I personally feel like it's sort of a visual version of a documentary. You know, you watch a Ted Bundy documentary, you are like hearing about his life story, trying to get in the head of like his everyday life and what he was feeling and what he thought. In a documentary, you learn about all of that. You learn about the childhood, you learn about the hearings, you're seeing actual crime scene photos of what actually happened. And I feel like movies kind of do the same thing as documentaries do, you know, taking you through the childhood, showing this person, but instead of, you know, doing the narration, it's kind of a recreation of the narration. I feel like those murder movies kind of do the same things as documentaries, except it brings a more visual aspect to it for people to better understand. As long as the people who are making these movies speak with the victims directly, as well as, you know, speaking with as many people involved in the situation as possible to ensure that their stories are being said correctly and all of the facts are correct, I feel like they're fine. But again, I'm not your mother. You don't have to have the same opinions as me. You could have completely opposite opinions. I don't know. Maybe there's something that I'm completely missing and y'all are like, Haley, what about this thing? And I'm like, now why are y'all those smartest people on the face of the planet? That's happened so many times where I've said something and then I'm like, oh, blah, 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 but you can have your own opinion. And then people will put down their opinions in the comments and I'm like, oh, now why didn't I think of that? Now why didn't I think of that? That is such a true statement. That is such a true statement, and I actually retract my statement and replace it with yours. Today I went for a kind of, again, like a little grungy Halloween sort of look. I got my nails done so you guys can stop yelling at me. These earrings are from Etta Love. This top is from the thrift store. This top is from the thrift store. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to follow me on any of my social medias, like my Instagram, that will be linked down below, as well as my PO box if you would like to send me anything, and also all of the products that I use on my face. So if you're like, girl, what is that lip? That will be linked down below. Oh yeah, I got new bracelets. I got a black obsidian bracelet, a rose quartz bracelet, and a third eye. Or is that an evil eye? I'm not really sure. I think that's it. Do something that makes you happy today.